So good morning to all of you, to all of us. And so this is my last opportunity to address this most choshev assembly before driving to the airport on my way home. And as I arrive, I have a shiur to the Agudas Yarchikala, and then another shiur, Baruch Hashem. So we're leaving a shiur in one continent, going to some shiurim in another continent. Kodesh Baruch Hu Yazreinu, L'man Kavod Shemoi. We should always be able, for many more years to come, L'hagdil Torah U'Lahadira. So this is my fourth session in the Chemet conference, and once again I want to thank everyone, Dr. Friedman, the entire staff, for this amazing opportunity for us all, an uplifting weekend, beautiful Shabbos. And the topic I was asked to discuss today is, I don't remember exactly the wording, navigating something about front lines, but it is about the special time we are in, the war that's raging in Israel. And it's maybe, some would say, the most difficult period since the state was established. In many ways, terrible war. It's the longest war Israel fought. It's going on for 4 months, and nobody knows how and when it will end, taking a terrible toll. Every day soldiers are dying, ledavon lev, limginas nofesh. And internationally, we are in a very difficult position. Anti-Semitism is on the rise in the entire world and in America as well. So, just a few general comments about the responsibility of a posek in these times. And I also want to draw some comparisons between doctors and rabbonim, because this is a medical conference, not a military one. But and these will be my closing remarks. So I am always a very busy person, as most of you know. We interact throughout the year with some of you. But since the war broke out, Simchas Torah, I've been inundated with many more responsibilities, shilas, unusual times being unusual shilas. And some of the questions I've been asked were just so inspiring that I broke out crying even before I could respond to them. And this is just to understand that Israel is a country in transition, and by far and large, Israeli society is coming back to its roots. And all the security establishment in Israel has far more from people than ever before. I don't have the statistics, but I think a great number of those killed and injured in this war were from soldiers, some of them real B'nai Torah and Tzaddikim, and some of them I knew very well that were killed, Talmidim of mine. So one of the shilas I shared many opportunities, and it was the most moving question I had in this war was from a young soldier in an elite unit. Maybe some of you already heard the story, but I'm saying it again to those that have not heard. So a young soldier in an elite unit calls and asks. He has 2 days to go home, but his wife is in Nida, and he's afraid that he won't be able to abstain from giving her a hug or a kiss before he goes back to war. He's not afraid of a Issachores. He knows that what won't happen because they're a frum couple. But he might just not be able to abstain from giving her a hug or a kiss before he goes back to war. Could he go home? And I think to myself, this young soldier is not sure he'll ever see his wife again. He'll ever see his kids again. He is contemplating, could I go home? I don't even know whether it's important to share what my tshuva was, what my answer was, because sometimes questions are more important than answers. And I think this shaila is such an amazing shaila and so inspiring and heartbreaking that maybe the tshuva isn't as important as the shaila. So these are some of our young soldiers, real tzaddikim and yirei shamayim. To those of you that might be interested, my shaila was, yeah, you could go home. Go home and do your best. And my answer was not only based on my emotions or a feeling, but on a sugya, Bava Basra Daf Nun Zayin, the sugya of Darka Achrina, which I won't analyze now. I'm just giving those amongst us that might want to deal with the tshuva. I'm just giving you a maramoko in Bava Basra Nun Zayin, the sugya of Darka Achrina. But the question was so inspiring. And another shaila that one of the military rabbanim shared with me was a soldier that had a baby boy while he was in Gaza, and his commander let him go home for Shabbos because the bris was supposed to be on Shabbos. But he called and asked, even if I leave Gaza Erev Shabbos, there's no way I'll make it home before Shabbos. Could I still go home? And his Rav answered, you have no heter to be Machal Shabbos to attend your son's bris. As important as it may be, but it does not override Shabbos. So if you can't get home before Shabbos, you could have no heter to travel. However, if you are battle fatigued, and commanders in the army know there's a limit how long a soldier could go on fighting. And after a few weeks in the battlefield, they're always given a break to go home for a few days just to air out your head, as one might say in America. So his Rav told him, if you feel that you cannot go on fighting unless you have a few days at home, then you could go home, but otherwise, just to attend the bris, you have no heter to go home. And after 15 minutes, the soldier responded, I do not think I'm at that stage. I think I could go on fighting, so I'm staying here because I don't have a heter to go home to attend my little baby's bris. And then the soldier writes, I hope when my little baby will grow up and I'll explain to him why I couldn't attend his bris, I hope he'll be forgiving. And I hope it'll be a lesson for him in Yirat Shamayim. Well, it was a lesson to me in Yirat Shamayim. And these are levels of Yirat Shamayim that are really, really amazing. Because this soldier actually got a pass. You know, he got a green light. All he needed to do is just to convince himself, yeah, I need to go home. But doing his own personal cheshbon and nefesh, he decided, I don't have a heter, so I'm staying here, and I will not attend my little baby boy's bris. I've told these stories so many times, and every time I tell them, I choke up and I become emotional. Even though I said this 100 times, but every time I relate these stories, I become emotional. So, these are some of the questions we have been dealing with. In principle, we have to be very concerned and very careful in psukim that we give in special times to be aware that when this is over, we might have a problem retracting some of those psukim. So a few years ago, we dealt with the COVID pandemic. And at that time, I quoted Reb Shlomo Eger writing in one of the cholera outbreaks 200 years ago. And cholera was recurrent in Europe. It happened, every decade or so, there was a new outbreak of cholera. And Reb Shlomo Eger writes that his great father, Reb Akiva Eger, was concerned that some of the kulas and heterim we give in a time of crisis, we might have a hard time retracting when the crisis is over, and we need to bear that in mind. So before that war actually broke out, I think it was about a week after Simchas Torah, after October the 7th, So the Jewish date when this tragedy struck was Simchas Torah, and the Goyish date is October the 7th. And many times they say Simchas Torah is the happiest day in a Jew's year, in the Jewish calendar. Not necessarily by halachic criteria, but in practicality. Simchas Torah, I think, is the happiest day Jews have. When we hug a Sefer Torah, we dance with Sifrei Torah, and the Simcha is Ad Lev Hashemayim. So, Simchas Torah is Simchas Torah, but October the 7th is a day which will forever live in infamy. So it took about a week since the brutality of October the 7th until the army entered Gaza and war on the ground actually started. And at that period, there was a huge, huge demand for tzitzis in the IDF. And more than 100,000 or 200,000 soldiers were desperately waiting to wear tzitzis. And that in itself is a testament and an indication of the new face of the Israeli army. And at the time, I gave a heter for women and girls to tie tzitzis, because I considered this an extreme shas tchak. If soldiers want to wear tzitzis going into battle, believing that the schus of the mitzvah will do them good, and based on Siman Yud Gimel, according to the Mechaber, according to the Shulchan Aruch, girls could tie tzitzis lechatchila, and the Ramo is machmir, based on Maram Rutenburg, Rabbeinu Tam, various different opinions that are brought in Tosis and Gittin Memhei and in other sources. So according to the Shulchan Aruch, mutar lechatchila, even according to the Ramo, it b'diavad, the tzitzis are kosher, it's just a lechatchila. And the Aruch HaShulchan writes that it's a chumri yaseira. And we have a concept in Hilchas Issa V'Heter, shas tchak kidi eved dami. So I gave a heter, and I stressed this is for a limited period of time. And in many seminaries and in schools, girls and women started tying tzitzis. I think it was about 3 weeks later that I said a shir in public, and I said, Adkan, because the war is already raging. The vast majority of soldiers of war and tzitzis already got their tzitzis. And I said, we need to go back to minag avoseinu shebiyodeinu, especially Ashkenazim. According to the Ramo, girls, women should not tie tzitzis. And even though I said this in public, and originally when I gave the heter, I stressed that this is for a limited period of time, I was aware, even weeks later, that some places, they continue to have the girls in school tying tzitzis, to my dismay, which I wasn't happy about. Now, the tzitzis are kosher b'diavad, but I just bring this as an example. This is a challenge, because in times of crisis, when kulas are recommended and not only permissible, but we need to be concerned, and we need to bear in mind that at some stage it'll be hard to retract some of these psukim, and therefore I tell my friends, Rabbonim and Erzsol, His haru b'devrechem, and you need to be concerned when you're giving psak that the day after we might have some difficulty in la'achzir atara liyoshna and bringing things back to normalcy. So many of the shilas are in the entire breadth of Dalet Chelke Shulchan Aruch, but it is natural that many of the shilas are associated with Shabbos. Waging war on Shabbos, is that because war is pikuach nefesh? That is the classical understanding, that war overrides Shabbos because war is about destroying the enemy and saving Jews. However, Tshuvas Arivash, Siman Kuf Aleph, and the Sfas Emes, Shabbos Yutes, reaches the same conclusion on his own, and he quotes Shior Knesset Gdoila. Waging war on Shabbos is permissible not only because Jewish wars are about saving lives, but it is a halacha bifnei atzma, just like korban ois tzibor doichen Shabbos, mila bizmana doichen Shabbos, melchama doichen Shabbos. And waging war successfully overrides Shabbos. And even if a certain maneuver could wait till Motzei Shabbos or Sunday, it is permissible to do that on Shabbos. Fundamentally, one might try to define the question, war on Shabbos, hutra or dechuyo. These are two different concepts. So according to the Rivash and the Sfas Emes, it would be hutra, and according to others, it would be dechuyo. So even though, as I said, Israel is a country coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but still, it is not the Rabbanim that dictate to the army exactly how to wage war, but there is a high level of interaction between Poskim and the Israeli army. But according to the Sfas Emes and the Rivash, the successful execution of war overrides Shabbos, and we do not need to consider every maneuver. Is it important to do on Shabbos to save lives? So that is a very important fundamental understanding. One of the painful shuvas I wrote during the past few weeks was due to the tragic phenomena of soldiers killed by friendly fire. In Israel, in Lashon Kodesh, it is defined as Yeridut Tzaddi. In English, it is defined usually as friendly fire. And more soldiers were killed by Jewish friends in this war than ever before. And it is the nature of urban warfare. In close quarters, one might say it's inevitable, and it happens. And it's the most tragic phenomena. Some hostages were killed by Israeli soldiers by mistake, and soldiers. And some of the soldiers that shot their comrades turned to me broken-hearted, asked, Ma tikun shalanu? Do we need tikunei tshuva? So let me give a brief introduction to the entire concept of tikunei tshuva. It is an Ashkenazi concept, not very well known to the early Sephardi poskim. 3 times in Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah relates to tikunei tshuva. Shin Lamed Daled in Hilchas Shabbos, Kuf Pei Hey in Hilchas Nida. If a person is nichshel in Chilul Shabbos or in Nida, he needs to fast 40 days to atone for his sin. Hilchas Yayin Nesech, if a person by mistake drank Yayin Nesech, he needs to fast 4 days. And I don't know why this is 4 and that's 40, but these concepts are based primarily on Sefer HaRoikeach, one of the early Chasidei Ashkenaz, 900 years ago, and Sefer Hasidim. The Beis Yosef, not even once in the entirety of Shulchan Aruch, doesn't relate to the concept of tikunei tshuva. It is primarily an Ashkenazi concept, but in later generations, adopted by Sephardi Gedolim as well. And there are many, many tshuvas. In the tshuva I have written, I brought about 15 different sources. A person that brought about the demise of another Jew. What is his tikkun? And most of the poskim are very, very machmir, and they write very harshly. The first source is Tshuvas Meharuvail, Siman Kuf Chav Ches. Meharuvail was one of the Rishonim, Bnei Ashkenaz, one of the later Rishonim. We don't know the details of his story, but we do know a person sent one of his workers, one of his employees, on an errand, and the employee was killed running that errand. And even though the balabayas, the employer, did not bear any direct responsibility, it wasn't a very dangerous errand. There was no negligence, no recklessness. But nevertheless, he writes that he needs to fast many days Because after all, you indirectly brought about the death of a fellow Jew. He proves this point from Sanhedrin Tzadik Hey. Kodesh Baruch Hu tells David HaMelech, you brought about the demise of Kohanei Noiv, the Kohanim of the city Noiv. You brought about the death of Doeg and Achitophel. You brought about the death of Shaul and his 3 sons. And therefore, I give you to choose between 2 options. Either you will fall into the hands of your enemies, or your lineage will be destroyed, and you will not be Zeichet to B'nai Bonim. And it is only natural that David chooses to bring the wrath upon himself. And he says, if those are the options, I would fall into the hands of my enemies. Perek Ayin Beis in Tehillim, the last posuk is Kolu Tfilos David ben Yishai. According to Pshuto Shel Mikra, this was David's last tefillah. Kolu Tfilos David ben Yishai. Ein Mugdam ve'Meuchar b'Sefer Tehillim. It is 72, not 150, but it concludes this perek, Kolu Tfilos David ben Yishai. And the very first posuk is Elokim Mishpotecho lemelech tein v'tzidkoscho leben melech. Rashi explains, Midas adin tei kol abi. I take upon myself midas adin, rachamim ten lebni. And I think every Jewish father, every Jewish mother would say the same. Let your wrath be upon me and for my children. Please only give midas rachamim. So Marival proves from this Gemara, even though David does not bear direct responsibility for all that loss of life, nevertheless, he needed a kapora. Shalosh Teshuvas Tzemach Tzedek, 400 years ago, not the second Tzemach Tzedek, but the first, the Menachem Mendel Krochmil, one of the Gedolim in Germany, has 2 tshuvas dealing with this concept, Siman Vav and Siman Tzadik Gimel. And in one of the 2 tshuvas, same story, but with more detail. An employer sent one of his employees to run an errand, and he crossed the bridge, and it was very slippery. He slipped on that plank, fell into the river, and drowned. And even though the Tzemach Tzedek disagrees with the proof from Masechet Sanhedrin, because he argues all those deaths were brought about by David's negligence. But in our case, we're not dealing with negligence. Nevertheless, he says, I can't go against Marivail, and he too says, many tikkun tshuva are required. There are 6 sources in the Poskim with gun accidents. The first one is Tshuvas Aramos in Melamed Zayin. Some of you would be surprised to learn that people used guns 500 years ago. So some of you, if you studied American history, you know about the pioneers fighting the Indians, and the white man had guns, which the Indians didn't, and that wasn't very fair on the battlefield. So those old guns were nothing like automatic weapons we have today, but there was a gun with a long muzzle, and the warrior or the hunter had 2 pouches. One pouch with avak sreifa, with fire powder, and another one with pellets, which were considered bullets, and you poured some of the powder into the muzzle and then some of the pellets, and you had 1 shot. And that shot not always went where you planned it to go. So in Tshuvas Aramo, there's a story of a young boy sitting in a wagon holding the reins of the horses, and behind him an adult. And the adult, by mistake, fired his gun and killed the boy. And the Rama, once again, like his predecessors, writes, he needs to fast many tzaimis, more than 40. And the golus, he needs to leave his home. And for the first year, not to sleep 2 nights in the same bed, and very harsh restrictions. And so we find in Tshuvas Maharam Melublin, Siman Mem Gimel, fascinating tshuva from Reb Chaim Cohen Rappaport, who was the Rav in Lvov in Lemberg more than 300 years ago. And in his tshuva, he deals with the husband that by mistake killed his wife in a gun accident, and he fled because the police were after him. And from his hiding place, he turned to Reb Chaim Cohen Rappaport, what is my tikkun? And he writes in his shaila, I don't want any kulas because I feel horrible. I killed my wife. So please, beli hanachot, as they say, please tell me what I need to do. And he writes in his shuvi, you need to fast 430 days. And I don't know how he got to that number. First of all, it's a brocha, as gula larichas yomim. If he needs to fast 430 days, he needs some time to do that. So generally, poskim are very, very harsh in their tshuvas, even if it was an accident. The tshuva of Maram Lublin deals, in Israel, we have what is called a kitat konanut. And in every town and every settlement, there is a unit, ex-combat soldiers that were in combat units. Now they're civilians, but they carry arms. And if there's any infiltration of terrorists into the town, they are the first responders. So just like we have first responders that respond to pikuach nefesh, like Hatzolah, in Israel we have first responders that are armed, and they are to fight off the enemy until the army or the police arrives. So, interesting, Tshuvas Maharam Melublin, we're dealing in Volin, which is Central Europe, and there were a lot of attacks, so the government organized armed civilians, and they were required to do training in a shooting range. And this Jew was shooting in the range, and suddenly out of nowhere, another Jew ran into the line of fire, and he was killed. And that seems to be a oines gomer, and nevertheless, tshuva of Maram Rabbeinu is very, very harsh. So based on all the information I just gave you, which is really an abbreviation of sources, we would say that these soldiers need a serious tikkun, but no, it is not so. And this brings us to two fundamental tshuvas. One of the Marshal, Siman Tzaddik Zayin, once again going back 500 years, somewhat less than 500 years, and a tshuva of the Chassam Sofer. Tshuvas Marshal Tzaddik Zayin, there's a story about a Jew named Moshe Lipschitz. And he was on a boat, and there was a young Jewish boy, mischievous, maybe had ADHD, I don't know exactly what his condition was, but he was too lebedik, and he made everyone aggravated on that boat. And as they docked, the Goyim wanted to catch that Jewish boy and beat him up. And Moshe Lipschitz was afraid for his life, for the boy's life. So he told the people on the boat, leave it up to me. I'll catch him, I'll punish him. So step aside, leave it up to me, I'll take care of this boy. And he started running after the boy. Obviously, the boy ran faster than he did. So he asked the passerby, could you please catch that boy for me? And he ran after the boy, and the boy fell to his death. And Moshe Lipschitz turns to the Mashal and asks, do I need a tikkun? Surprisingly, the Mashal quotes previous tshuvas, but he writes, you were trying to save. And if you were trying to save, you need no tikkun. And the Mashal writes, I am afraid, nimtzo ato machshilon lo'osed lavoi. If we make life difficult, and we give a guilty conscience to people that we're trying to save, then next time around, people won't want to get involved. Why get into it if I might pay a steep price? Therefore, he dissolves Mr. Moshe Lipschitz from any responsibility. Tshuvas Chasam Sofer Kufayin Zayin. Chasam Sofer deals with the case of a young cleaning lady, a Jewess, that fainted. And the Balas Abayis ran to bring some schnapps to revive her. Once upon a time, people believed that a glazel schnapps is a remedy to whatever you have. So when a person fainted, they ran to get a bottle of whiskey and pour it down his throat, believing that that will save his life. Sometimes it worked. When it worked, it probably would work even better without that schnapps. But that is what they believed, that if you pour some bromfin down his throat, he will get up. So the woman ran to bring some schnapps, and by mistake she brought bleach, and she poured bleach into that young girl's throat, and she died. And the Chasam Sofer was asked once again about Tikkunei Tshuva. Surprisingly, the Chasam Sofer writes, she was trying to save that girl, and therefore I don't want to make life difficult for her. And he is very, very lenient and mild. He says she should daven le'ilui nishmasa and give some tzedakah, and that's all. So in these strange cases of the Marshan and the Chasam Sofer, the Chashash, what would the result be in the future was very remote, because this is just coincidence. But soldiers on the battlefield, they did their duty. And someone that was never on a battlefield can't understand the tension of a battlefield. And you need to decide in a fraction of a second how to respond. If you don't kill, you are likely to get killed. And those soldiers did what they were trained to do, what they were expected to do, and therefore they need no tikkunei tshuva. 3 hostages were killed by Israeli soldiers, and the mother of one of these hostages, in such a courageous display of generosity, publicly called to those soldiers, I want to invite you to my home when the war is over. There's no anger in my heart, and next time around, I don't want you to hesitate for a second before using your weapons. You did what you were trained to do, and I see this as a gzerat shamayim. That is what a mother publicly said, a mother of one of the hostages that were killed by Israeli soldiers. So my psak was, they need no tikkun. However, I did call the Rav of the Gedud, where these soldiers were serving, and I did tell him, not the soldiers, but their rabbi, when the war is over, I think it would be recommended that these soldiers do something. Don't fast, don't go to Golus, but something positive. You know, maybe establish a keren, tzedakah in the name of the soldiers, learn and daven le'ilui nishmasam, because after all, you did bring about the demise, even though you are not to blame in any way, of fellow Jews. So I think something would be required, something positive. So these are some of the things we have been dealing with in Israel in this tragic time. So many times I said, since the war broke out, when people come to see me, tens of thousands of Jews, I don't know, probably more, have visited Israel in the past few months. And many of them come to my home. And I tell them all, are you aware that you are insane? And they all look at me puzzled, and some even offended. Why does the Rav think we are insane? And I say, because sane people stay away from a war zone. A war has been raging in the Ukraine for more than a year and a half, and I'm not aware that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have been flocking to Kiev and Lviv and Mariupol to be with their brothers. It's not happening. 1 million Ukrainians fled the country, and millions of Russians fled the country. We are a beautifully, magnificently insane people. And that is because we are not only a people, we are a family. All Jews are one big family. And when your brother is in pain, you want to be there with him. When your brother is bleeding, you don't give him a call from far away. You want to sit next to him. So we are all coming to Israel, and most of the people don't know exactly why they're coming. They're coming to see, they're coming to feel, coming to be with their fellow Jews in a time of pain, and they're coming to try to be helpful in any way they can. And they are helpful. This is a tremendous Kiddush Hashem, and it's a tremendous chizuk for Israeli society as a whole. And it is an eye-opener for many secular Israelis, soldiers in the field, the wounded in hospitals, the uprooted and displaced, and their families, because most of the people coming to visit Israel are from people. And to secular Israel, they're just amazed to see how many from people from around the world care for them, and how many there are. So it is a great Kiddush Hashem, it's a great chizuk, and it's a chizuk for both sides, for Israelis and for you, and American Jews that come to visit Eretz Yisrael in this time of pain, suffering, and time of need. However, I tell my American friends, you don't need to come to Israel to be helpful. You could be helpful in Lakewood, in Brooklyn, in Teaneck, wherever you are. Because we believe, and we believe in Divrei Chazal. And many times I said, Israel never wins wars just by might and force. Israel wins wars b'koyach haTorah. We believe what the Gemara says in Makkos Daf Yud, Oin doisoyu ragleinu b'malchome b'schus shayu shalayim shoiskim b'Torah. It's not that we don't need an army. We need the best soldiers in the world with the best training, with the most advanced weaponry, with the highest motivation, and I believe we have all that, but all that is not enough. Because nothing about Israel is bederech hateva. We are a people of miracles. And many times I say, bederech hateva, we shouldn't have been around. Bederech hateva, Israel would be 2 or 3 pages in history books. Somewhere between ancient Troy and the Roman Empire, it would be written, there was a people, they called themselves the Jews. They claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I think that's the way the others are called in English, if I'm not mistaken. And they rose to prominence so-and-so BC, and they sank into oblivion so-and-so AC when their temple was destroyed. That would be natural. But we are the people of eternity. We are the people of miracles. And that is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised, Ki lo yishochach mipi zaroi. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised our avos, we will make it to the finishing line, and we will be zeicha to be as HaMashiach. So nothing about us is natural. We don't win wars by natural means. We win wars in the schus of our soldiers, in the schus of our talmidim, in the schus of our b'nai Torah, sitting in every yeshiva, in every kollel, in every bismedish in the world. This is a joint effort. So I have a magnificent pshat in a Gemara, a story told in Megillah Daf Gimel and a Sanhedrin Daf Mem Daled. B'shas kibish oretz Yeshua ben Nun goes out by night. I don't know whether he went out to the field for tikkun chatzas or to just air out his head. Don't know. But he takes a walk and he sees a general. And he doesn't recognize that officer. And he asked, Chalonu at im litzorenu. If you would be one of my commanders, I would know you, but I don't recognize your uniform. So are you friend or foe? Friend or foe? And the Malach responds, I'm not a mortal. I'm a Malach. I'm an angel, and I've been sent from the heavens with a message to you. Loi ki sar tzvo Hashem onoichi. And Yeshua asks, what is the message? And the Malach says, Bittul Torah. How does Yeshua respond? Vayolen b'toich ha'emek. Malamid shalan ba'umko shel halacha. I wasn't there. If I would be there, I would tell the Malach, Rebbe Malach, you might be a great Malach because I don't understand that much about Malachim, but obviously you do not remember Shas. Because in Soita Daf Mem Daled, it's a Gemara Meforeshes that b'Shas Melchemes Mitzvah Oisig b'Mitzvah Potter Min HaMitzvah. So we're Potter from Talmud Torah. What are you complaining? What is this message about? Don't you see this is a Melchemes Mitzvah, Kibish Eretz Yisrael, and it's a Gemara Meforeshes Oisig Mitzvah Potter Min HaMitzvah. Maybe Yeshua brought out that argument, and my guess is how the Malach responds. And the Malach says, Yeshua, open your eyes. Are you blind? Do you not understand what you are seeing? Open your eyes. You thought I'm a commander. If I would be sent from the heavens, lidboa elbona shel Torah, I would be wearing a hamburg and a frock, like all the other Rosh Hashivas. If I would be sent from the heavens to talk to you about Chassidus and Yerushalayim, I would be dressed up in a shtreimel and a kapota, maybe Weiss Zaken, maybe white socks, like many of the Rabbeim. I'm in full military gear, and that is how I was sent by a Kodesh Baruch Hu from the heavens. Bati lidboa elbona shel milchama. I'm not talking to you about mitzvahs Talmud Torah. I'm talking to you about war. How do you expect to win this war with Bittul Torah? The Malach tells Yeshua, Ha'oila al ruchacho hayo lo tihiyeh. You can't win this war with Bittul Torah. That's not the way Jews win wars. And then Yeshua understands, and Vayolen b'toich ha'emek. Not a chevres tehillim, but a koilel erev. Ba'umko shel halacha. So the Posek in Shoiftim, the war of Barak ben Avinoam and Devorah Hanaviyah, Magen im Yira'eh v'romach ב-40,000 מישראל. חז"ל זה 40,000 מישראל שיצאו למלחמה, זוג אחד של תלמיד החכמים, ואני מציל את כולם. The Magen and the Romach are the weapons of yore. The Romach is an offensive weapon, which the warrior holds in his right hand trying to kill the enemy. And the Magen is the shield, which is a defensive weapon. The Magen and the Romach were transformed 10,000 times into artillery and armor and infantry and special ops and cyber warfare and missiles and anti-missile missiles and anti-missile missiles. But forever, success in war depends on offense and on defense. And it is only the combination of the two which could bring victory. Hamagen v'aromach b'malchamto shel Torah. That's the makshin and the taratzan. That's the way we learn. Kashas and teritzim. Kushisa v'piruka. To use the Lashon of Chazal. Ze le'uma ze. Hamagen v'aromach shel Beit HaMidrash. Give the koyach to our soldiers in the field. So it's amazing that you come to visit Eretz Yisrael, but you could be helpful sitting here in America, wherever you are. And every Jew that believes in a Kodesh Baruch Hu, in a time like this, needs to learn more and learn better. Daven more, daven better. Be nice to each other. Do a lot of chesed. And believe that you're making a difference. And that is how each and every Jew in the world could make a difference. And I tell my chaverim and my talmidim, if you're no different today than you were on October the 6th, either you don't believe or you don't care. If you care and you believe, you must be better. And if you're not learning more, learning better, davening more, davening better, it is either that you don't care or you don't believe. And I assume that we all care and we definitely all believe. So if you care and you believe, you must do more. To use the Lashon of Chazal, אם לומד דף אחד, ילמוד שני דפים. למד שעה אחד, ילמד שתי שעות. Do more, do better. More chesed, more Torah, another few kapitlich Tehillim every day. So I was moved in this weekend, after every davening, the entire tzibur said Tehillim together. To my dismay, in many places, 3 months ago, everybody said Tehillim. People get tired. And the Shliach Tzibur is saying Tehillim, and 80% of the Tzibur is already out of the shul, and that's a charpa, that's a busha, that's a disgrace. So let us all hope that this war will be over fast and it'll achieve its goals. V'notati sholem ba'oretz u'shchaftem ve'ein machrid. You should come to Eretz Yisrael just to learn Torah and to visit your children in Eretz Yisrael and to visit the Koisel Maravi. And you should have no need to visit injured in hospitals or army bases in the north. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give peace to our holy land, and we should share B'Seides Tovis. So thank you again for having me. And we should only share B'Seides Tovis with B'Zoichet u'Mashiach Tzedkeinu b'mheiro v'yomeinu. Amen.